Welcome to Portland Film Beat. I'm Dave Poland, and my guest tonight is Ryan Walters. Ryan's one of the most knowledgeable people in the Portland area when it comes to cameras, lighting, filters, and the importance of them. So thank you for being here, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Let's start with what first got you interested in film?
Well, honestly, dates back to hanging out with my grandmother. I'd go up to my grandparents' place for the weekend, and she was an avid photographer, and we'd go out shooting, and then come back, and I'd flip through all the little photographs that she took, and that's what really got me into like photography and all that. But then later on in high school, they brought out. I think it was a super basic Avid system that they let some of us kids play on, and that's when I started to see that you could make these still images start to move, and so that's what kind of got me into filmmaking at a young age.
What was your first camera?
Oh, the first camera I used, or the first camera I
the
owned?
First motion video type camera, not the first still.
Yeah. Gosh, I would have to look it up. It was an old high 8, really clunky, big old high 8 camera. I don't even remember what the what the model number was.
Okay.
But yeah.
Where did you first train?
I have a mixture of background, both from school and then also just from doing internships and all that. I took some media classes at the Art Institute, and then I took some internships at local production companies, and then it's just been a lot of reading books and hands-on practical experience on set. Sounds
good. Are you working on any current projects?
Yeah, well, right now I've joined, or I've partnered up with a business partner, Tim Park, and we are in the process of putting together a training program called an Indie Cinema Academy, and so that's what we're working on right now, is producing a bunch of camera and lighting training videos.
List the key things you look for when you're lighting a set.
Ooh, what I'm looking for when I'm lighting a set would be, first thing is where the natural light sources are coming from. So show up in somebody's houses, I'll be looking for where their practical lamps are, where the windows are, and all that kind of stuff. So so that I can use that to help motivate where light should be coming from in the scene. So that's kind of the first thing I'm looking for. And then after that, I'm going through the script and talking over with the director, kind of what the mood and feeling of the piece should look like.
One of the things I think that independent filmmakers miss is the value of good lighting. Mm-hmm. Not all, but it's almost as if they throw up a key light, a backlight, and a fill. And the thing about lighting is when you read about it, especially your blog is wonderful.
Thank you.
I've learned so much from it. That's why I wanted you on here. That the different emotions and feeling you can get from a story based what the lighting is just tremendous. So before you prepare to light, I guess you do scout the locations in advance.
Yeah, in an ideal situation, I'll go with the director beforehand, and we'll talk through the script. We'll talk through a little bit of the blocking, like where he imagines he's going to have the actors go, and we'll talk about even time of day when we'll be there, so that way I can get a feel for what the light will look like when we're there, whether we can work with what we have or we need to bring in additional light to supplement it.
Okay.
And then so all that scouting information really helps on the day of, just be a lot more efficient.
So are you bigger on backlighting, or with brighter backlights and softer front, or does it depend on the scene?
Yeah,
you've got to have a feel for one kind of. I think.
Yeah, I think it depends on what I'm shooting, but my general approach, what I like to do is I like to use big soft sources, and then just a kiss of a backlight to help separate them a little bit. If there's some way to motivate that in the scene. If not, I don't try to force that. But yeah, I like big soft sources.
Okay, when working with a director and setting up the lighting, because you're going to have a two-shot, you're going to have an over the shoulder, and do you try to shoot in the order of the lighting setups, or do you just go in and, I mean, it's got to be by the lighting setups, I know, but sometimes the directors don't look at it that way. How do you work with a director who doesn't look at it that way?
Yeah, that's the tricky bit is trying to navigate logistics versus practicalities, because sometimes, you know, based off schedule availability or whatever, you have to shoot out of order. So it's just a matter of balancing that, you know, which is more important for this particular setup. And so if in an ideal situation, you know, we'll shoot the wide shot first and then work our way in, because it's it's easier to change the lighting and not have that be noticed as you work your way in. Whereas if you have to work backwards, you can kind of work yourself into a tight corner if you don't do it that way. But sometimes, you know, based off of performances or, you know, just logistics, it has to be done. And that's where, for me, like using a light meter, taking notes, and even just having a good mental image of, okay, this is where I'm starting. I want to end up, you know, somewhere else. And so trying to picture where I want to end up allows me to work backwards. A
lot of people don't know about color temperature, and it still perplexes me a little bit. What is color temperature and the importance of it, and how does it change the scene?
Yeah. Well, color temperature is the temperature of the different sources of light, and it's measured in degrees Kelvin, and it influences how well our eyes naturally adjust. You know, when we go into like a incandescent or tungsten lit environment or go outside, our eyes really don't notice the difference. They automatically adjust, where cameras do, and so they'll see, you know, daylight's more blue and incandescent and tungsten light is more orange. And so that can really influence the look of our films, and also we can use it to our advantage. If we want something to have a more cool look to it, you know, we can play with the color temperature in our camera to make it look a little bit more cool.
Or with the lights themselves.
Or with the lights themselves, right. You can throw gels up in front of the lights to adjust how it feels. So then in the end, you're influencing how your viewer, you know, feels about that.
Okay. We're going to get back to lighting in just a second here, but you touched on something, and that is what the camera sees as opposed to what our eyes see.
Right.
And actually, celluloid is actually closer to probably what the human eye picks up. Not like the really high-end digital cameras, is it? With the sensors, they're a little more sensitive, aren't they? Or not quite as sensitive?
The digital cameras, or
like a Red or an ARRI Alexa, something like that.
Yeah. Well, as far as film and digital goes, film does a great job at like overexposure and the highlight latitude that it has, whereas digital doesn't. It's getting really close to film. It's still not quite there, but it's knocking on film's doorstep. But where digital is really great is in the shadows or the underexposure latitude.
Right.
Digital blows film out of the water and being able to capture shadow detail.
Right. Do you use a lot of shadow detail? Do you like to use a lot of shadow detail? Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I don't know that I use a ton. I like there to be texture in the shadows and to see nuances there. But I think it really depends on the content of what I'm shooting, because something that's supposed to be more mysterious and even more scary or foreboding, I like to remove shadow detail there so you can't see a lot, because what you can't see, you end up filling in with your mind, and it makes it feel more scary. Whereas, you know,
it actually keeps you actively involved in it as well, which, you know, as audience members, you want to keep them actively involved.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, don't give them everything.
Yeah.
Let them work for it a little bit.
Right.
And we want to work for it.
Yeah.
We really do. Light meters. On your blog, before you came in last week sometime, there was a really cool, great article about light meters, why to use them, and what value using a light meter can bring to the table. It's a lot. The blog was full of a lot. So can you briefly touch on what value light meters add? Because I've been on a lot of film sets where I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, okay, But they're very inexpensive little tools.
Right. Yeah.
And a notepad to keep track of what you're
Right, yeah.
telling you is important, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. There's no point in.
Do you think it's important just to write it
it
on the back of the script on the scene that you're using, or do you keep it a separate log?
It usually I'll just use my phone because it's the quickest thing that I can get to and access.
Okay.
So I'll just pull up a little app on my phone and write little notes to myself. Before I had that, then yeah, I'd just keep a little notepad and
Right.
do that. It's just about ease of access.
Okay.
But
Getting
it's,
back to the
yeah,
importance.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I got you off track on that.
No worries. As far as the importance of light meters, I see them as really crucial tools to help you be a lot more efficient in the work that I do. Like when I'm out scouting a location, I'll be taking light readings to figure out how much light the actual location is giving me, and so that way I can know how much I need to supplement it, or what my exposure level, needs to be at. So scouting, it's super important. And then on some shoots, I'll have to be shooting in one location and working with a crew to light another location. And I have yet to work on a production where we have enough budget to have two cameras sitting there, one sitting at the second location and one sitting at the first one. And so by using a light meter, I can
understand.
I can light that other scene and have my crew work on lighting that other scene by giving them specific light measurements and saying I want the key to be at a T 2.8 at this point, and they can be working on that while I'm off using the camera somewhere else. So it just ends up being a lot more efficient. And then as long as I take all my notes and I know what my levels are all at, if we ever need to come back for pickups.
I was glad you touched on that because that is so important.
Yeah.
You shoot something, it doesn't work, you got to come back. Having all that information really makes it so when you match cuts, it just works.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And if you don't do that, it doesn't work as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the trouble of not using a light meter. If you're trying to go off your memory, there's so much that can just influence it. And even I've found, like on the longer days, you're working 10, 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever, my eye gets really tired, and even just looking at a monitor, it's like, oh, that kind of looks right. But I can bust out the meter and I can say, nope, that is not right. So so that just that helps raise my confidence level. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of editing?
I do, just for my own personal stuff.
Do you use Final Cut or Premiere Pro or?
Yep, use both.
Do you?
Yeah, I use both of them.
How has editing helped you pre-think lighting? Because it does. When you all of a sudden when you edit things, you see film differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How has that helped you?
Yeah, and editing. I think that's an integral part to being a better DP and all that is because through the editing process you can really start to see what works and what doesn't work as far as being able to cheat lighting setups and being able to even with like framing or camera movement, being able to string together a bunch of shots really teaches you a lot. Like, ooh, that didn't quite work as well as I thought it would. Or there've been some times where I've really cheated, lighting setups, and by that I mean, completely like moved the orientation of the key light or whatever. But because of the shot size difference and all that, it ends up cutting together really well. It's like, oh, okay. I just learned that, this is what I can get away with.
Okay. Right now, we're going to take a quick look at Ryan's reel from all the work that he's done. And as soon as that's over, we're going to be right back. So enjoy it. Wow, Ryan, that's very impressive. You've done a lot of work.
Thank you. Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. So I wanted to show that prior to going on and moving on to cameras and shots, because you are actually a camera operator too.
Yeah, yeah. I have a tough time giving over the camera operation to someone else because
you just like it.
There's just something that being that close and that connected to what's going on screen. I just really like that. I don't know. There's an intimacy there. There's an immediacy that I just really enjoy.
Okay, what's your preferred camera?
My preferred camera is the one that's right for the job.
Okay, all right, that's a good answer. I wanted to hear that.
Yeah, because it really just depends.
Because each camera does have a little bit of a different flavor to it, as far as the grays and stuff. I think with the Arri Alexa, I don't know. You know more about. That's why you're here.
Right.
To tell us about that.
There's even more than just like how a camera looks. Like there's just the physical size and physicality of cameras that go into it. Like I really like shooting on the Arri Alexa. I think the skin tones are great. It has a lot of highlight range. It's just a beautiful camera to work with. But it is a physically larger camera, heavier, and all that kind of stuff.
So if you're using a Steadicam, it makes it a little more difficult, would you say?
Yeah,
it seems to me that
but even just
Hollywood production films are using the Alexa now more than the Red.
Yeah, well, even this last year. More films were up. Actually, I think all the films that were up for best cinematography were shot on the Alexa. But regardless of that, it's just a bigger camera, and trying to lug that around. Like if it's a small crew, I'm not going to bring that camera around. I want a smaller camera because it's going to be a lot easier for me to lug around and to use all day.
Right.
So there's even the physicality of the camera that comes into play.
Okay, so we talked about shots briefly. Let's talk about shots. You said you like to start with the 2-shot wide and then move in closer. Tell the community out here the reason behind why that is the best way to go about it.
There's a number of factors why it's better to start wide and then work your way in. First of all, you establish all the action in the scene. So if somebody's going to move left to right, they've done that in the wide shot, and now we know they're moving left to right. I've been in situations where they're working backwards, and now when we get to the wide shot, people are going the wrong direction because nobody can quite remember what was going on.
Because it was earlier in the day or
exactly.
the day before.
Yeah. And so if you just start and establish that, now you've got it locked in. So there's even just the actor movement and placement, blocking, all that stuff you work out. And then also you establish your lighting direction. So where's the light coming from? What does it look like? Is it a hard light? Is it soft light? What is how's it all interacting with the whole scene? And so if you start with your wide shot, you've established that, and now as you move in, you can start to tweak and modify it from there.
Okay, good.
It's like being static or dollying and all that. I think a lot of it is dictated by the emotion of the scene. Generally, things that are more steady or more are less rough generally tend to be better with either a more static or panning or like a dolly kind of move, whereas things that are a bit rougher in nature typically tend to be a little bit better rougher. So maybe handheld or something.
Right. When using a camera static, do you use the height of the camera to get the emotions? Like if you got the camera lower shooting up, it makes them look bigger, and then maybe the front over the shoulder of the villain kind of makes them look bigger, and then the over the shoulder of the other person, you make the camera higher so they look smaller. I mean, do you utilize those kinds of things?
Yeah, and anytime the camera is static, I think that's really where blocking and framing and all that stuff is ultra important, because the camera's not moving, and so your audience has a longer time to evaluate kind of what's going on, and so you need to be really intentional and purposeful with what you're doing when you use a static shot. I think a great example of some of that stuff has been House of Cards. They do a great job at keeping things static, and then also moving intentionally.
Okay.
Within there.
Since we're talking about shots, tell us what a dirty read is and when you use it.
A dirty read?
We got the person in the frame.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't know, they have different names.
Yeah,
I always call it a dirty read.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's it or not.
Yeah, I've just referred to it as a dirty shot or so basically it's just when you're doing a shot and there's a piece of the other actor, and it's not a true like over the shoulder. So you're not seeing like head and shoulders, all that kind of stuff. There's just enough of them peeking into the frame that it's.
What emotion or value do you think that brings to a shot?
I think that ends up connecting the person who's we're catching a piece of to the other subject more, and so when you completely remove them out of that, there's a bigger disconnect between the two. So by having a piece of them in there, it connects them more in the scene. Okay,
let's move on now. We're going to talk about lenses. Tell us, okay, there's the prime lenses, which are a certain one, but then there's also the other ones which are they zoom in and out. I take it you prefer prime lenses. Tell people tell the people out here what a prime lens is as opposed to one that's not prime.
Yeah, well, I prefer both. I like if you're just starting out, I think it's better to start on prime lenses because it helps you to develop a feel for what different focal lengths look like and how they influence what you're saying on screen. But from a practicality standpoint, I think zooms are quicker and easier to work with on set. Because you can just
not changing lenses in and
out. But if you can learn on primes, which are a fixed focal length, you'll train your eye to know what focal length that you want and where to place the camera, which is super critical to telling a good story. But then after you've trained that knowledge base into you, then you can use a zoom, and then you're doing a lot less lens changes, so you can work a lot faster on set. And then what I'll do is I'll use a zoom as a fixed prime lens essentially. So I won't be zooming in the shot, but I'll zoom to whatever focal length I want.
Okay.
Shoot that shot, and then move on.
So you don't zoom in. You set the shot. You adjust the lens to what you want, but you don't use the in and out zoom type thing. You prefer to use the dolly to move in on the subject.
Yeah.
So we're clear.
Yep.
Okay, tell us about some of the lenses, a 35 as opposed to a 200. What feel and the depth and things like that those lenses bring to the story, and because a lot of people don't realize that different cameras bring a different emotion and different feelings to the scene. And they do. They're used.
Totally do.
There's much more to filmmaking than set up the camera, set up the lights, and shoot. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. Can you touch on what lenses bring out, what value or emotions?
Yeah, I think it's all about how connected or how removed do you want the end viewer to feel. Because you can set up the same close-up using a 35 millimeter or a 200 millimeter. A 35 millimeter is a wider lens, so you have to move the camera in closer. So personally, I think as a viewer, you feel much more connected to what's going on screen because you're like the camera's right there, and as a viewer, you're right there in the middle of it. Whereas if you were to back up and use a 200 millimeter lens to get that same shot, now your distance has increased, and so as a viewer you feel more detached, more like you're now in the other room watching what's going on.
Okay.
Which can be a great feeling to add if that's what you're going for.
That's the emotion you want for in the scene.
Yeah, if you're wanting to be more distant, that's a great way to do it.
A lot of independent filmmakers, before they're to get any experience, I think, miss out on the emotion that camera, lenses, and lighting can bring to the scene. And it keeps actors from overacting. They underdo it, but let the camera do its work. And that's really, it's critical, I think. It's critical. We've got a couple minutes left here. You posted a blog, you've more than one actually, about filters.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a big believer in them too.
Oh, yeah.
Ellery, when we get a chance, can we put up his website and email too so people can see that a little bit? And if you want to get a hold of Ryan, there he is. Great. Talk about filters a little bit.
Yeah, I think filters are key in delivering the end result that you're looking for. I mean, just at a really practical level, they help you get your exposure exactly where you want it, rather than, you know, like if you're outside and having to shoot at a really deep stop and have everything in focus, you know, you can just throw some, you know, like neutral densities in to get your stop where you want it.
Okay.
But even beyond that, you know, you can use, you know, filtration like diffusion filtration to help, you know, your actors out. I mean, this is about making people look good. So
thank you.
Yeah.
As an actor, I love it.
Yeah, and
I like you guys.
and one of the drawbacks that I see to our high resolution cameras is you can see every single pore.
Every single pore. They actually have special makeup now for high density cameras.
Yeah, and
high definition cameras.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not always what you want to see on screen.
No.
And so, you know, you can throw some diffusion in there to help, you know, to help your actors out, or creating, you know, really stylized looks. Like if you want to go for like a more vintage feel or something like that, you can. Filtration will help you create your look in camera, which I think is a lot more effective than trying to figure it out later.
We have about a minute left. What is your favorite part of filmmaking?
Oh, my favorite part of filmmaking.
Is that running the
honestly,
camera?
I think being there on set is just like, if I could do that every single day, 24 hours a day, like I just love that whole process, trying to figure things out, trying to, you know, create a story. And then the other part of the filmmaking process that I really enjoy is being able to sit in a theater and listen to other people's reactions to
your work.
Which is really cool. Being able to influence people's emotions and to tell a story and to tell it well, I think, and see it well received.
Okay.
I think that's the ultimate experience.
So we're running out of time here. Ryan Walters is a great guest. This guy knows more about lighting and cameras than just about anybody I've met in Portland. That's why I wanted him on the show. If you'd like to get a hold of Ryan, his email and his website is up there. Please feel free to contact him. And I'm sure he'd be a great addition to any project that you're working on. Anyway, I want to say thank you, Ryan, for being here. I'd like to say thank you to my director, Ellery Nelson. He does a great job over there in the studio. And my producer, who's my wife, Carol Poland. And until next time, shoot for the silver screen. Thank you.